internet of value at Ripple, we're thinking much bigger than just cross-border payments. It's kind of like Amazon with rare books in the early days, just this market happens to be a $10 trillion market.
We are at a historic turning point.
Said in the past that you are doing for money what email did for communication.
Moving the whole revolution forward.
Take on it.
There's trillions of dollars parked around the world.
XRP.
Is there a possibility that Ripple could take over Swift one day?
Well,
welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of 24 Hours Crypto. Let's get right into today's video. Please share this video with everybody so they see it before it happens. $100 XRP is way too cheap. And before you jump the gun and say I'm delusional, I'll tell you the facts. Listen to the CTO of Ripple, the co-founder of the XRP ledger, that is stepping down now because the job is done. He's stepping down by the end of this year and he's joining the board of directors. You know what that means, right? It is time. And as much as you think that's speculation, that's totally okay. Every single piece of evidence that we have been providing on this channel, everybody said it was speculation. And now it's all falling into pieces. And you've heard David Schwartz say this part, and I'll play it in a moment. He said, it's really more like the availability of liquidity that determines how easily you can use an asset for payments when you don't have closed loops. David?
It's more the market cap, but really it's not quite like a higher price tends to mean a higher market cap, and a higher market cap tends to mean higher liquidity. It's really more like the sort of availability of liquidity that determines how easily you can use an asset for payments when you don't have closed loops.
And now that sounds technical, but what he said is the key to understanding why XRP is about to become the most important asset in the financial system. And I'm going to break this down to you. And you're also going to hear industry experts cut me off briefly, and then you're going to hear what they say as well about liquidity. When he says availability of liquidity, he's talking about how much XRP is sitting idle, ready and able to move money instantly. Okay? Because you have to understand, there's 100 billion XRP, but retail holds approximately 17 billion. Okay, that's 17% of the whole circulating supply. And majority of you guys, the ones that are educated, are going to be sitting on this until you plan to cash it out with an objective. There isn't enough XRP. So when he says, when you don't have closed loops, he's describing the future where we're heading into, a world where payments don't stay inside one single network, like JP Morgan's internal ledger or Visa's closed system. He's describing an open financial world, a level playing field, where every institution, every blockchain, every payment network needs to communicate in real time. And that communication happens through liquidity, the secret sauce.
Right. So we're very big believers in liquidity pools. We believe that liquidity pools are going to be a standard part of the future ecosystem.
So I'm going to give you guys a little example right here very briefly. So imagine two islands. Island A, JP Morgan, moves $10 trillion a day.
So when I talk about the $10 trillion that we're processing every night, and I was looking this morning, I think the market, the 24-hour volume for both USDC and USDT is like $25 billion or something. That's like 400 times less than what we do every day. And if you think about having to fully reserve $10 trillion to be able to make those payments every day, that's a lot of liquidity that you're taking out of the system.
But all inside its own system. That's a closed loop. Money goes in, money goes out, but all within their own walls. No XRP needed. Now imagine Island B, a world where trillions of dollars move between different institutions, countries, and blockchains. That's an open loop. In that world, you need a neutral bridge asset with deep liquidity, something that can instantly convert, for example, yen to euros, euros to dollars, dollars to pesos. And that's where XRP comes in.
Clients don't want, individual bank tokens. They want multi-token, multi-border liquidity for added efficiencies.
Right now, XRP's market cap is around $144 billion. Peanuts. And the 24-hour volume is just under $3.2 billion. That means only about 2% of its total value is actively moving in a day. So let's compare that to what's coming. JP Morgan, and these are very small numbers, JP Morgan alone moves $10 trillion a day. The FX market moves over $8 trillion a day. The global securities market moves hundreds of $trillions.
Like we're in the midst of a once-in-a-lifetime shift. But what we're seeing now is more of a revolution, with new architectures supplanting old ones. And the way our industry has operated for decades, it's going to be replaced with new ways. And the scale and the speed required to serve our clients, it's of a completely different magnitude. It's of a completely different magnitude. So here at Citi, where we move over $4 trillion globally each day.
And when XRP starts to handle a fraction of that flow, a 3.2 billion daily volume has to become hundreds of billions. In one day, trillions. And here's the catch. You don't increase daily volume without deep liquidity. And you don't get deep liquidity without higher price. Because the higher the price for XRP, the more value each XRP can carry. And that's exactly what David is saying. It's not about how big the market cap looks on paper. It's about how much liquidity the network actually has available to move value.
It's more the market cap, but really it's not quite like a higher price tends to mean a higher market cap, and a higher market cap tends to mean higher liquidity. It's really more like the sort of availability of liquidity that determines how easily you can use an asset for payments when you don't have closed loops.
So here's an example. Let's say XRP's at where we are right now, the $3 billion worth of XRP moves in a day. That's so tiny compared to $10 trillion that JP Morgan alone does. When banks around the world begin using XRP as a global liquidity pool, the market doesn't need to move tokens. It needs a higher price per token to handle that scale efficiently. Remember that. The market is not going to require more tokens to move that value. It's going to have a higher price per XRP to handle and scale efficiently. So for example, let's say XRP is at $1 and you need $10 trillion XRP to move $10 trillion. That's impossible. Let's say XRP's at $100. You only need 100 billion XRP to still manage that 10 trillion. But realistically, you're never going to see 100 billion XRP in circulation. And $1,000 XRP, well, you'll need 10 billion XRP in motion. And that's efficient. That's liquidity available. And that's what David means. And when we say $100 XRP is dirt cheap, because it is.
The tremendous liquidity we have in the world that is sitting idle.
For Ripple, we use this digital asset called XRP to settle liquidity needs between banks. So today there's $27 trillion parked at different banks around the world so they can make payments between each other.
The tremendous liquidity we have in the world that is sitting idle.
Second one is more complicated. It has to do with liquidity. So imagine that you have a pair of currencies for which there is not a complementary demand. You need to go and search for a third-party currency in order to make this settlement actually happen. And this really complicates things. So we need to put pieces of technology that can make more efficiency this use of liquidity so that more transactions can be settled.
So it just passes through that currency for that period of time.
A lot of people say, how could XRP ever hit $100 with that market cap? They're missing the entire point. Market cap is a statistic number. It just multiplies price by the circulating supply. Liquidity is dynamic. It measures how much real world value can move through the system every second, every day. And as David Schwartz explains, the more liquidity available, the easier XRP becomes to use for global payments. And that is why Ripple has been working with every governmental organization across the world, and that is a fact, to have this in place. Because it provides real value. They figured out the solution, they brought a value chain onto the table, and game over. So what happens when every bank, payment provider, and tokenized assets all start using XRP for settlement? Well, the liquidity demand goes vertical, and the price has no choice but to go up. We are watching the transition from closed financial systems where banks only settle internally to an open liquidity network where everything must be interoperable. Every bond, stock, currency, and stablecoins will need a bridge asset. That bridge asset must have instant liquidity in every currency pair. And the other asset designed for this job, the only asset actually designed for this job, is XRP. So that's why David Schwartz said it's about liquidity availability, because liquidity is the utility. And once the utility is, activated,
products work, but having liquidity in markets around the world for XRP is a big part of what will make our products over time successful. Serves a dual purpose. We measure our success not on the price of XRP, but on how much value we're delivering to these financial institutions. That's largely a function of, are they using our technology to move money around the world? And that curve is going up and to the right really nicely. So that's what really gives us a lot of energy.
Once it starts happening, it doesn't stop happening and it keeps spreading.
The number $100 won't sound crazy. It'll be the floor price. So next time you hear someone talk about XRP's market cap, remember this. It's not about how much the network is worth on paper. It's about how much value it can move instantly, globally, without any friction. And that's what David meant. And that's why $100 XRP is only going to be the beginning. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. And we will be back with another video.
The cost of XRP doesn't directly impact the cost of a payment. So in other words, if I want to buy something from you and the value of that thing is, let's say it's the equivalent to $1 million US. Like the amount of XRP, the price of XRP is going to determine if I'm going to pay you an XRP. The price of XRP will determine how much XRP I have to give you. But it won't make the payment any cheaper or more expensive, right? If the price of XRP is very high, I'll give you fewer XRP, but it'll cost me more to get them. And if the price is low, I'll have to give you a lot of XRP, but I paid less for each one. So there's no such thing as like cheap XRP making payments cheap or expensive XRP making payments expensive. And that's the point that I was trying to make there, that the price of XRP doesn't determine whether payments are cheap or expensive. But what does happen is, in general, the higher the sort of market cap of the asset, it's not so much the price per unit, but the market cap does impact the ability to use the asset for payment. So for example, let's say I wanted to buy a house that was worth $1 million USD and I wanted to use Bitcoin to do it, right? Back when Bitcoin was like $100, you couldn't realistically use Bitcoin to pay $1 million because the market didn't have enough liquidity. Like if I wanted to buy $1 million worth of Bitcoin back then, I would have pushed the price up. And then when I gave the $1 million worth of Bitcoin to you, let's say to buy your house, when you go to sell those, you would push the price down. So you would take a loss on the buy and I would take a loss on the sell, and that would make the payment suck for both of us. But today, I can buy $1 million worth of Bitcoin without moving the market, and you can sell $1 million worth of Bitcoin without moving the market. So the higher, it's not so much the price, it's more the market cap, but really it's not quite like a higher price tends to mean a higher market cap, and a higher market cap tends to mean higher liquidity. It's really more like the sort of availability of liquidity that determines how easily you can use an asset for payments when you don't have closed loops. Obviously, if you have closed loops of the assets, we'd all love to see everyone in the Bitcoin space and the XRP space and the Ether space. If you see it for payments, you want to see closed loops. Like I want to get paid in XRP. I want to pay my landlord in XRP. I want to pay my electric bill in XRP. Then I'm happy to receive. Then we don't, then it doesn't matter what liquidity there is because you're strictly in the asset. But in the short term, before you can get to those closed loops, you're going to have open loops. Like maybe I can get Ripple to pay me in XRP, but then and I can hold, and maybe I really like holding XRP. Let's say I love holding XRP. So yeah, I'd like Ripple to pay me in XRP, so I'm holding XRP as soon as Ripple pays me. But then when I have to pay, for groceries, my grocery store is not going to take XRP yet. So I have an open loop and I need some liquidity in order to be able to buy my groceries. Now, if there's not a lot of liquidity and it's very difficult for me to convert my XRP into dollars, then that open loop system doesn't work. And so so the price of XRP doesn't matter to this, right? Ripple might pay me more or less XRP. I might need more or less to pay my bills, but it doesn't matter. The system works just as well. A cheap XRP isn't meaningful there. But what is meaningful is how expensive or how much it cost me to sort of convert. And especially for big payments, like if you want to make $1 million payment, it has to be that $1 million buy or sell of XRP doesn't move the market a lot, because if you move the market, it's always going to be against you, right? Moving the market always means it's going to cost you more to buy, or you're going to get less when you sell. So if you're moving the market, it's going to effectively a tax. So what I was saying in that quote is that the XRP being low in price doesn't make it better for payments. In fact, it probably leads to a smaller market cap and less liquidity, which makes it worse for payments.
But I think the idea of buying and holding forever and not trying to make adjustments requires that you've gotten it right in the first place. That you can only hold tight if you've bought right, if you will. And that is to say, have an asset allocation that has something to do with how many years you have to accumulate money, how much resources you have at stake, how much income you need, and how much courage you have to ride out the peregrinations of the market.
That's the way you say it. It's a long-term play.
Accept reality. Fiat money is moving digital.
Well, I woke up this morning, check my bags on the chain. XRPL still humming while the FUD folks complain. Ripple fighting Goliath, yeah, the SSA's game. But Johnny D and Hogan, they're bringing the flame. So we salute to the rebels in suits.
Good luck with it.
To the coders and hodlers wearing dusty old boots. Raise a toast to the ledger and the lawyers who bite, while taco stand dumps through the middle of the night.
Accept reality. Fiat money is moving
Brad
digital.
G's on the mic saying clarity now, while Shorts codes the stars with the hologram cow watch. The haters keep chirping, but the people ain't blind. This ain't some mean dream, it's the internet's spine. Regulators stalling, but the clock's ticking fast. Ripple drops the case like a baseline blast. Communities united from Twitter to the street. We meme through the madness and never admit defeat.
That's the way you say it. It's a long-term play.
To the devs and the geeks, to the ledger that clears in seconds, not weeks. To D, to Hogan, to Legal Delight, and the salty old taco that just loves to spite. Hey Jed, you done yet? Or you got another dump scheduled for lunch? So here's to the warriors, the freaks, and the fans, waving salute tokens like battle flags in hand. It ain't just about coins, it's a movement, a pact. We defend what we build, and we're taking it back. Come on, salute to the ones in the fight, to the token that laughs in regulatory spite, to Schwartz, Brad, and the ones still believing, even while taco stands always leaving. One for XRP, and raise your guitar for decentralized dreams. This song's for the ledger, the truth and the proof. With a smile and a nod, we say salute.
That's the way you say it. It's a long-term play. It has to have value. Can't just be a store of value for store of value's sake. It has to actually have a use case, and that's how we see this evolving.
Okay.
We started building RippleNet with the thesis that crypto liquidity would eventually be able to support robust global payments, large payments. RippleNet was designed so that customers seeing the benefits of our fiat-based network could flip the switch to ODL once the market was mature enough. And this is exactly what's happening. Flip the switch. I think what we're building has, it's solving a real problem. And I think all of the tokens, my advice to anybody would be, understand the utility. If there's real utility and there's real value being delivered to a real customer, there will be value in the token.